We had a sign salesperson that actually sold a sign to a jewelry store. We installed the sign, and then later on the day, he went back there with a friend and robbed the jewelry store. No joke. You can't make that up. Hello, Behind the Signs community. Welcome to the Behind the Signs podcast. I am Joe, and I'm here with my lovely co-host,
Liz. Hi.
My daughter.
That's me.
Yes. So today is going to be a cool conversation. We're continuing our series in sign business leadership and ownership, and I guess basically from starting a sign shop all the way to possibly exiting if we ever get through all this stuff at the end of the year. But
it's going to take a while.
It is. But before we get started, I want to take a minute to thank our lovely sponsors. Thank you to Sign Tracker. I'm a little biased about Sign Tracker being a great project management tool, but if you are interested in trying Sign Tracker for free, go to sign-tracker.com. To learn more, just hit the try it free button and you are in a trial, full working trial, and just have fun. And of course, Sign Tracker is brought to you by Inktobo, and they also have a ton of great production products. So if you go to inktobo.com, there's just too much to talk about. So go to Inktobo, INKTABO.com, and learn a bunch of good stuff. So anyway, with that.
Did you just spell it out for people?
Yeah, Inktobo, INKTABO.
I mean, it's also
.dot.
Oh.
Com, C-O-M.
And as always.
It's on the interwebs.
Wow.
We're never going to get through this podcast. Anyway, okay.
And of course, stop.
Okay.
Let a lady have a word.
All right, go ahead.
And as always, thanks to you guys.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
I absolutely would not do this without you.
That's right. We do. We love you. And we love the sign industry, which I'm going to continue to hammer into your head.
Why do you lie to people?
I mean, think about this. No, I do love the sign industry. Think about it. Yeah, it's creepy.
Just say, and I love the sign industry.
I love the sign industry.
Then you're not lying.
I'm not lying.
I know.
I love the people. They're awesome. They're creative.
Yeah.
They're definitely colorful.
Yeah.
The products plus I think the joy of helping, especially in B2B, right? The joy of helping other businesses realize their dreams. I mean,
sure.
that's a cool part of the sign industry.
It is. When's the last time you talked to a superintendent?
No, I'm not saying that there's not.
That was a question.
There's not PETA customers, pain in the customers, but still. Part of the conversation that we're having today is, well, still more about leadership, right? Transitioning and growing as a leader. And I think something that we've talked about is, how do you deal with, I guess this is just me. I'm going to speak for me and then you can kind of chime in and let me know what you think about this. But
I always do.
I mean, that's true. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things that I struggled with in becoming a better leader was getting over the idea that I really needed to be liked. And I guess I confused that with being respected. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, I had a really hard time with boundaries, right? So, and it's especially, I think when you're smaller, when your company's smaller, like when we first started out, there was 2 of us, then there was 4 of us. And, and I'd say all the way up to 10 of us, it was like work hard, play hard together. We'd go out after work, we'd drink some beers or whatever. And, but then, when you start getting into the 12, 15 and up employees, then it changes, right? It changes. There has to be more structure, more boundaries as the owner or as a team lead or as a manager. So, but it wasn't easy for me to transition.
I mean, in a lot of ways, I am my father's daughter, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of things that I learned from you. I grew up watching you own a sign company. And even, my mother owned a small law firm for a while. And I think that I'm lucky in that my personality is a good mix between you and mom.
Mom's Irish, so it's easier for her, right?
A little, yeah. She's cold.
No, I wouldn't say she's cold.
If you don't know her, she's pretty cold until you know her, and then she's very warm.
She's direct. Mom's very direct.
Yeah. Anyway.
The Irish are impervious to emotion, I think.
Now, we'll say, like, I'm lucky.
In a good way, though.
I'm lucky in that Russell, my business partner and husband, of course, he is very direct. And he's really good at drawing the line of, like, I'm your friend until I'm your boss. And then I'm just your boss. Yeah. Like, I am not as good at that.
I was terrible at that.
And, our team has fluctuated. We've been as high as 12. And we've kind of settled. Our happy place is around 7, 8, which is where we are now. And it is hard, right? That's such a small team to not, how do you build that culture?
Intimacy.
And build that trust, that tree of trust without being that person's friend. And then when you're their friend, like, it's hard to tell your friend that they're effing up. Like,
their job's in jeopardy. Or whatever.
It's hard to turn that switch and say, okay, I like you, but I don't like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And how do you define that? How do you define those two roles in your head? For us, we did a good job of, like, kind of separating some duties. So our team knows that I do handle HR. We do make it very clear that if you have an issue with anyone or anything, you can always come and talk to Russell or myself. And then same vein, we try to talk with that team member about how they can handle the issue themselves directly, if it's with another team member, or even with, like, if someone came to me and they have an issue with something Russell's doing, same, you talk to them. But how do you do that to the team member, right? Yeah. Like, and for us, Russell and I, we've struggled with that. He not so much, but when he'll tell me, like, I handle our PM department, I handle our account management department, and if something's not happening on that end, he's like, you need to deal with this. And I'm like, oh, okay, shit, all right, I guess it's my turn. And it's hard. Hard.
I think for me, when I started, it started to become an issue, when you got to the point where you had to be like, well, to continue what you're talking about, it's like talking to employees or team discipline issues where you need to talk, that was the tough part for me, like transitioning into that point where you had to be the boss and not the buddy. Yeah. And yet still be friendly and cordial. And plus you're like the motivator, the cheerleader. All those kinds of things, which is super positive. But on the other hand, sometimes you have to write someone up, for example.
And how?
Yeah.
And how?
Yeah.
Like, if you have to, God, it is hard, but it does have to happen, right? Yeah.
That was the part. That's the part when we get to that level where it's like, okay, now you're not just thinking about, like, it was easier when it was smaller, like, hey, Bob, you need to kind of tighten up on this, but then it had to become more official where people were brought into an office and someone else had to be in there. And then there was an official, like, I don't want to say like a reprimand, right? But, we have to talk to them about what's going on and sort of document it just in case. And you got to like those sorts of activities for me became really hard. And it wasn't until I could think about the team as a whole. So not that I didn't care about individuals at our company. I really did. And I know that was part of being a good leader, but I also had to think about the team as a whole and the impact of if one person wasn't, doing the things they were supposed to be doing and it was dragging other people down or creating more work
Absolutely.
for other people or impacting the quality of a project. So it affected a customer relationship. Then you have to take on that role as boss.
The leader. Yeah. And I think that there are two different aspects of this, right? Like, and I think in a minute we can go into kind of like the processes. And how we side. Kind of set that up to help us, but kind of talking about that emotional journey as a leader and understanding that these things do happen. If you want your business to grow, sometimes there are growing pains, and this is part of those growing pains. Some team members just don't want to grow with you. And, you know, like you said, you have to focus on your team, and you don't necessarily want, if someone's not carrying their weight, then other people are carrying it for them. And is that fair to your team?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then how do you, you know, separate yourself emotionally? And you don't always, I think, is the answer, right? How do you separate yourself emotionally to write someone up? Well, if you're you said it was easier when you were small.
Yeah.
It's not.
No.
I'm telling you.
Well, when I was small.
Sometimes it's harder when
well,
it's
the
small.
thing is, I wasn't quite as official as you are when we were small.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I would be just more like, hey, Bob, you got to get this on track or whatever.
Right.
I was smiling because I was just thinking about when you said emotions, bringing emotions into that.
Right.
I have two extreme experiences there was one employee that we had to let go of one time, and it was awful. And the employee cried. I cried. It was terrible. But it was the right move to make. It was good for the rest of the team. And we did it, and we went through with it, and we stayed tough. And it was really, really hard. Yeah. Then there was another time where I had to fire an employee, and I brought him in to talk to him about it. And he was belligerent, and I just stood up off my chair and screamed, "Get the F off the property. You're fired," and walked him to the door. I wouldn't say that. Right. And so it's hard not to get your emotions wrapped up in this.
So I think that's where, right, and we're going to get to it, but I think that that's such an important point, because when you're a small team, if you've become a friend to these people that all of a sudden aren't listening to you and aren't doing what they need to do, and they're taking advantage of you. Yeah. It's what it is. And now you've taken it personally because you're their friend and they're taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
How do you not just get really pissed off? Like, you have to be able to draw that boundary for yourself so that you don't let your anger get to that level, because then it gets so messy.
Yeah, it does get messy.
Really messy.
Well, so let's. So
then systems.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Right.
Let's talk about that, because for me, you know, I definitely tended to be super lenient. I mean, ultimately, what helped me,
as the person on the receiving end of many of your firings, like, I'm not sure you were lenient as much as you were lenient until you weren't.
No, I mean, when it comes to family and friends, working at the business, that it's always hard, right? So you were family, you know, so it was easier to fire you and rehire you and fire you and rehire you
every day.
Yeah. And actually, this is just a little side bonus in this video, but I always believe this. You can pick your friends.
The devil picks your family.
The devil picks your family. That's some free advice.
Yeah, I've been told that my whole life.
So look, you're further along in the HR world. I mean, other than, I would say, some of the things that helped me was we finally grew to a point where we could hire a person that was an HR person. And she was the controller and HR. And then ultimately we even grew to another where we actually had a person that managed all the HR, because we ended up with like 60 employees. So we needed someone that could do that kind of work. And that made it much easier for me, because then it became a system that everyone kind of fell in. Everyone had to, the same rules applied to everyone. There you go. The same rules applied to everyone. And so why don't you talk about that? Because I think you're way smarter than me when it comes to that kind of stuff. And you're doing it. You're living in it now. So
yeah, well, that is true. I do live it every day. And I will say, I think that my background lends to just knowing a little bit more about those processes. Yeah. My background is accounting. You do have to have some HR training when you go through bachelor's, at least where I went for college. And also, the jobs I had previous to owning a business were all small businesses, and I typically was grouped in, right? Like, you're controller and HR, you're staff accountant and HR. So you're kind of just
that always
a lot of times those departments are
they do fall on. Yeah, that's how it did it. That's how it worked at our shop too. The accounting department sort of managed HR. And then ultimately we hired an accountant assistant that handled most of the HR duties, right, but was still doing some accounting work too. Now,
I will say, having an accountant in a small business, that's okay. When you get medium and large, you should kind of start looking at a dedicated HR person. There are just more intricacies.
But most sign shops aren't going to get to that level, actually.
I mean, some do. And
some do.
Especially if you consider like HR can then start looking at benefits and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So if you have a fabrication shop, I mean, workers' comp, all that stuff, that could all go through HR. Right?
Yeah. But if you are looking, I mean, if you're an average size sign shop and you do hire a bookkeeper, a lot of times it's good to try to find somebody that can handle some of the HR stuff because most of the time that's where all that's going to fall, I think.
Yeah. I think my background lends a little bit better to understanding what needs to be done for HR. But again, there are some intricacies that when your degree is in accounting, you get a brief kind of overview of, you just don't always get all the details. That is a specialty. So if you get a little bit bigger, I think it's wise to kind of look for dedicated HR. That said, for us, the other thing that really worked was that my business partner came from a large corporate background. And so when we started, a big thing that he had was, I want to set this up as if we were a large corporation, systems wise. So that was really good. And I know we're going to jump into that more in a later episode when we start talking about setting up systems for your own business, but we'll kind of focus just on the systems that we set up for accounting and HR. And first and foremost, we developed an employee handbook.
Can I say something really fast before you go on with that? Just because I'll forget. Because look at this. Look at this. No, it's also because I'm old. But if you're on the Behind the Signs Facebook group, and if you're not, and you're finding us through some other way, join the Facebook group because there's a file section in there, and there's a really good employee handbook sample.
Perfect.
Now, there's a big disclaimer in there that you should go over it with, somebody like a lawyer or an HR person or somebody. I mean, it's very editable, but it's a good starting point. So if you don't have an employee handbook, it's free. Just go to the file section on Behind the Signs, download that bad boy. I think it's in Excel, and go ahead and edit it so that it works for your shop. Okay, sorry.
One of the admins.
I didn't want to forget that.
That's great. And as one of the admins of that group, like, I'm a little annoyed that I didn't know about that, though it came along way too little too late for me. But having some sort of template to start with, giving you the bones, the structure, amazing. For us, we focused a lot on developing our culture through our handbook because we're so small. Yeah. So yes, it has all of our policies, procedures, PTO policy, parental leave policy, all of those policies are in there, which again, we're smaller than is required to have all of those things. But because we set our company up as a larger corporation, structurally, we're not registered as a corporation, but structurally, internally, we've kind of run this very organized like a corporation would, which to me is more scalable. Yeah. Because we did that, we were also able to start researching things like benefits so much earlier. So we offer health benefits, even though we're way under what's required to do that. And we carry workers' comp. We do all of the things that most really small companies don't do. And you don't have to necessarily do all of that, but it does make you more competitive in the workforce. That said, because we set all of that up, part of what we set up in our handbook was the process of termination, basically.
All right, talk to me about that.
So for us, you get
verbal warning. I'm a project manager. I'm your project manager.
Yeah.
And I approved a change to a project that was going to cost the company $5,000, but I never got the client to sign off on it.
Is this your first offense? Because I'm pretty sure I've hired someone for that once.
This is a real life deal. I'm going to be that other person.
That's fine.
He was such a nice kid.
Okay.
But anyway, we had to let him go. So that's when we had the company together. That wasn't
the only issue. We have a system of. But
okay, I'm this kid. I've already been written up once for not recording a change on a job. Now I just made a $5,000 error on a job. The client's it's a general contractor who's kind of a hard ass and won't pay the extra $5,000 because it wasn't signed off on. What do you do with me?
Okay, so if this is your first offense,
it would be my.
I'm going to walk through the steps.
Okay, let's pretend it's my first, then the second, and then the 5,000 is my third.
well, I'm going to just walk through the steps of what we have set up, because I think that everyone has to do it how they feel comfortable. But for us and the research that I've done for unemployment claims, I would highly recommend having a system in place. So for us, its first offense is a verbal warning. A verbal warning is a conversation that we have. It's a meeting. It is followed up with an email confirmation that you have received a verbal warning because...
So that's your written confirmation, the email.
The email is a written confirmation of a verbal warning.
Okay.
The verbal warning is just an email confirmation because it's technically a verbal warning, right?
What's the tone of it?
It depends on the offense.
Like, is it a pathway to redemption, the tone, or is it like, don't do this again because it'll lead to a write-up? Or
it depends on what the offense is,
okay,
right? Like if this is a redeemable thing, but if you're not immediately firing someone, which is so rarely recommended unless they're just really not, they're really harmful. Yeah. For me, the path is redemption, because typically we don't want to fire someone. Now, I'm going to let you stop talking for a second. Right. Do you like how I did that?
I have a lot of stories, but I'm going to just I'll let it go. I'll tell that story afterwards. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So
we did have an instance where we just absolutely fired someone first offense.
And sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
There are repercussions that come with that, but you can typically, usually the repercussion is unemployment claims. Yeah. But again, it depends on how long they worked there.
I'm going to tell you what he did.
Go ahead. You just really want to get this out. So please go ahead. And then we'll tell people about the systems that we have set up in place so that they can protect themselves.
It's almost not even believable, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
Oh, Lord. Oh, is this the one that robbed the jewelry store?
Yeah.
That he sold the sign to?
Yeah. We had a sign salesperson that actually sold a sign to a jewelry store. We installed the sign, and then later on the day, he went back there with a friend and robbed the jewelry store. No joke. You can't make that up. And the police... Knock
on wood, that's still the only time I've been to jail.
Yeah.
Is when I went to go pick up his stuff, and I was like, I've been to jail.
The police showed up at our shop, and a couple of police cars, and came in and arrested him. And it was... Anyway, he was caught on camera, and the jewelry store owner was like, wait, that's my son guy. It's actually kind of a sad story, but... It is, but also... But he was fired.
Really funny. It was really funny. It was funny. Okay, anyway, so what we have set up in place, obviously there are instances where you immediately have to fire someone, and there are no repercussions for that. They can't claim unemployment. They Definitely can try, but they're not going to.
They're not going to win.
They're not going to win, and they're in jail. So, okay, what we have the verbal warning followed by what we call a CYA, right? Cover your ass, which is just a written email confirmation. That is followed, if the offense is repeated, it's followed with a written warning. And a written warning has the exact offense written out and the steps that need to be taken to not do that again, what our expectations are. I think it's really important to always make sure you're explaining the expectations. So once you're past a written warning, the third is probation. And probation is as it sounds. It's your second written warning, and you're put on formal probation, and depends on what's happening, but I think our probation is 60 or 90 days. And if you do anything within those 60 and 90 days, it doesn't have to be the same thing. If you do anything within those 60 to 90 days, you're fired.
Do you
that is
do you meet with them over that period at all to review like the progress? No.
Okay. Not really on that scenario. Okay. So those are what I consider when you're in probation, this is punishment era. And what I'm doing as a business owner is building my case for unemployment. Yeah. I've taken the steps needed. They're not doing their job, and now they're fired. We have a whole separate system for growing, and that's called a PIP. It's a professional improvement plan or personal improvement plan, however you look at it. And that's the one where we're really...
Do you have a template that you use for that?
I don't have a template. I mean, we built our own, but there are so many online.
Okay.
And so it's definitely something you can find.
So if you search for
PIP.
A PIP template?
EIP, yeah.
Yeah. I think the big thing with all that you're talking about right now, I tend to learn things the hard way. Thankfully, you don't as much as I do. But there was a lot of times during the processes of, disciplining reprimanding or whatever, or writing up employees that we did not document things correctly. And it led to just unemployment claims that we lost.
I have never lost an unemployment claim.
Yeah. So that's the lesson
But
there.
I also have had very few. I have only had in our company. In our company, we've had to terminate one employee. They weren't with us very long. It was very apparent after they started that there were some substances involved that weren't there prior. And that, for me, is a very personal thing. I've dealt with it a lot in people I know, and family. And family. And it's hard, but also I have to protect my team members. So that was very quick. There's no redemption. I gave him, I still went through the steps. Verbal warning. These were day after day, though, because he kept doing I knew it was going to happen, but I had my stuff in a row. So verbal, written, and then after the written, he got terminated. And that's one way to do it. That when you're on that path, you're just protecting yourself from unemployment. The second path for us, like I said, is professional improvement plans, PIPs. For the most part, 97% of the time, 98% of the time, we don't want to lose an employee.
No.
I mean, whether they're a warm body, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're not causing harm and they are, for the most part, pulling their weight, and we just need to mold them a little bit and teach them. This is a way where we can write out specifically what the expectations are, and we're constantly meeting them and discussing milestones and moving on to the next thing.
Right.
So I do want to say, though, those are two different paths, and it's super important that you don't confuse the two.
Yeah.
A PIP is not a punishment. And I think there are some companies that use it as such. And if you do, you don't have a tool to use to help someone grow. Yeah.
And and I think at the end of the day, look, you want your employees to be successful, right? You hire people. I mean, the whole idea of owning a business or being a manager in a business or a team lead as an installer or whatever. I mean, the idea is that you're going to help another human being grow and reach their full potential, but you have to be able to do it within some structure.
And that's like, did you want to tell another story?
No, I wasn't going to tell another story, but.
I mean, keep going then. I was just going to say, that is just one of the so many things you have to think about when you're a leader, right? Employees and their livelihood, employees and your business livelihood, employees and your own livelihood. That's just one burden of so many. And I don't say that to scare anyone.
No, that's what I was going to transition into next, actually, is because I feel like we're talking about a bunch of scary stuff. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to write people up and be a disciplinarian and blah, 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 and draw boundaries. And but I think the flip side of all of what we're talking about is what a joy it is to be able to help somebody reach their full potential. And your company can be a tool to have a positive impact on the lives of so many people, not just your employees, obviously your customers and your community. But since we're talking about leadership and employees or being a team lead and having your mentees, if you're like more of a I don't know what you would call it, like a lead. If you were a lead installer and you'd have your assistants or whatever.
Yeah, I think
junior technicians or whatever. Whoever it is that you're responsible for. Like if you look at your role as a leader and as an owner to really help another person to reach their full potential, it's great. And another thing as a leader, and this is the cool stuff about becoming a leader. Like if you can get past that emotional drain of like, oh man, I got to be the person that, draws the line in the sand. I got to be the boss. But if you can get to that point where you just derive a lot of joy and pleasure out of, the whole puzzle, like putting the puzzle together. I have this role. I'm going to find a person that is going to fill that role, or at least has the potential to fill that role. And then you're going to have a system in place that's going to help them to be and do better. Mm-hmm. And I think about some of the folks that we had at our sign company. I think one guy in particular, And when he started at the company, he had no technical skills whatsoever. But he wanted to be in the sign industry. Like, he had been exposed to it. I think his cousin was in the sign industry, and he had moved here to the United States and just, really wanted to be in this industry. He saw that it looked cool. And when he started at the shop, he started sweeping floors, and then we at our shop, and thankfully we had the resources to do stuff like this. But if you went to, say, community college and took some classes in design or a welding course or whatever, as long as it's something that improved your skills that would contribute positively to business, we would pay for a portion of that. Or community college was cheap enough as we grew, we actually would sometimes reimburse for the whole thing. And this particular person went on to become a designer, a really pretty good designer. But before he became a designer, he was in a design program at community college. He slowly but surely, would help with fabrication, had help with painting, help with running the router, had help with organizing files. Then, because he had some of those mechanical, because he had built that skill set, he became a really good designer. And ultimately, years later, went on to leave the company. It happens. Started his own sign company and is doing really well. He's got a nice size company. And it's a great success story. And, I look at that and go, heck, we did that,
That is cool. And there are a lot of those stories, right?
Yeah.
If you do it right and you set yourself up for success from the beginning by setting those boundaries for yourself as a leader, people do depend on you to be a mentor. And they do depend on you to kind of guide them in this industry because you're the person that knows. And I think that that's really important. But again, and we're going to go into kind of on our next topic, our next episode, we're going to kind of go into how to set up systems like that. Yeah. But for this episode's purposes, it's understanding that, like, even though you're setting those boundaries for yourself and you're setting up these employee systems for yourself, it's important to recognize that these things are burdensome, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. There are things it's important that you can do to kind of alleviate that burden. And part of that is just a mentor, getting a mentor, connecting with someone, either another small business owner. They don't have to be in the same industry.
Well, you definitely don't have to figure this stuff out alone, right? Because there are times when, if you're pouring yourself completely into growing a team and making sure that right person is in the right place, and making sure that once they're in the right place, they have opportunity from there to grow and be, improve their skill sets and be successful and love their job. But on the other hand, you're right. I mean, trying to do that alone sometimes can be like, well, you're in a silo, right? Am I doing this correctly?
That's such a great way to put it. You can either be in a silo, or you can get people around you, get a support system around you, not that are in your business,
right,
but that are in your position.
What are some of the things? Right. Some of the things that I did, and it took me a while to realize that I needed to do this kind of thing. But I got an SBA mentor, Small Business Administration mentor. So if you go to SBA's website, they have free mentor programs for small business owners that you can talk through issues like this. Like, hey, I'm going to be expanding my business. I have 3 positions that are opening, and how do I fill them? And help me? How do I determine who the right person is? And so you can get support for that, or like Liz,
joining your sign association,
huge,
very huge, because you can mix and mingle with a lot of business owners.
Well, a lot of sign associations have mastermind groups,
absolutely,
and
you have local and national for that. And I know we talked to Lori Anderson a few episodes ago and kind of touched on that, but that's a really important step, and just to make sure that you're supported. For me, what I've done, therapy. Get a therapist.
I talk to my therapist about business stuff all the time. And
oh
my God, I hate this employee. I want to kill them. Joe.
But I think that you
shouldn't kill your employees.
Yeah, please don't. That you won't win that case.
No.
There's not enough write-ups. But I think that it's important to be able to talk about your stressors and find ways to have a relief valve.
Yeah.
And for me, that's somehow also genetically running.
Yep, running helped me.
Thanks
sure.
for that. Now, you can very easily become a running addict. As someone who just finished a marathon, I don't recommend it.
I just finished my 20th.
And I finished my first. We ran it together. And I'll never do it again because that was crazy things. Anyway,
I said I would never do it again, but I might consider it if you do.
I'm not considering it.
Well, just one more.
Wild. Did you see the report that it literally eats at your brain to run a marathon? Like your body starts burning fats in your brain that you need to insulate your brain.
That explains
it. Actually makes a lot of sense, right? Okay, anyway. So, no, but for me, my outlet is running, therapy, yoga. Sometimes it's vegging in front of the TV and turning it off. I also try really hard. Oh, and this is a do as I say, not as I do. But I do try to limit my hours, right? Like when you first start, you're working a lot more. But at some point, you have to turn off or you're not effective. Yeah. And limiting your hours is super important. So just, I think the main thing is finding what works for you in getting that release valve to let go of some of this stress and some of this burden to be able to continue to see it as a blessing.
Yeah, it is definitely a blessing. So
anyway, well, that kind of wraps, I think, what we're talking about today of just kind of changing, right? You're changing your mindset from I'm an employee to I'm a leader, or I'm not even I'm an employee, but maybe I've worked with these people at their level and now I have to tell them what to do. Yeah.
All of a sudden my company's grown. We started off, there was 2 installers. Now we have 5 installers and you've been just promoted to the lead installer. Yeah. So how do you mentor those that are, how do you mentor those that are newer to the team and make sure that they've not only do they fit into the company culture, but when they're out in the field, they're teaching them that they represent the company, or you're the lead designer, or you're the owner. Yeah. But you sort of all have to take on these, if you're in a leadership role, you all have to take on these sort of mentoring, a mentoring mindset. So anyway, it's the coolest thing though. Really, it is. I mean, it's
absolutely, it can be.
It can be.
It can be stressful, but it can be really cool and really rewarding. And next time,
so setting boundaries is not a bad thing.
No, it's so
hard
healthy
to transition, but it's definitely not a bad thing. So
and it's necessary.
Yeah. So grow as a leader. Don't be afraid to set boundaries and help people to reach their full potential. I guess that's the kind of the takeaway with all this today.
Agreed.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today again on Behind the Signs podcast. Comment in the comments below if this is helpful or if you have any topics that you'd like us to hit. We would love to hear from you. Either send us a direct message or just put a post in the Facebook group. Anyway, love you guys. Make great signs. See you next time.
See you next time.